Good morning, Predicted Trades family. Hope everybody's doing well. It is Thursday, June 23rd. We are going to have fun today. Real quick, let's check in on economic calendar. So, yep, we still have Uncle Pal at 10 a.m. testifying on monetary policy. Just like yesterday, he was also testifying on monetary policy at the Senate, and today it'll be the House. We also have some jobless claims at 8:30, and we also have some PMI data coming out at 9:45. So, some things to keep an eye out for. And then tomorrow we have some consumer sentiment index and 5-year inflation expectations coming from University of Michigan at 10 a.m. And that's about it. It looks like next week, we have some PMI, some core inflation, and some GDP. So, fun stuff to look forward to next week. Quick review. Let's see, the last 2 days we've been pretty strong out the gate. And then we arrive at a 4-hour squeeze top and get hung up. Yesterday, the overnight took us way back down, but we ultimately started and opened the day pretty close to where we did the day prior. And yesterday it was, again, very strong. We got up to the daily 8, and then pulled back to where ES opened, back to the daily 8, and then back below open, right to our burger bottom. If you're new to predicted trades, we output this. Here, let's just go ahead and clean this up. There we go. Come on, Toss. Put it over there. There it is. If you're new to predicted trades, we output levels every day on options and equity. These are levels for ES, the S&P futures, which I like to use as my guide for where the S&P might be going. So you can see yesterday if you are new to predicted trades, the white line in the center of this grid is where we open the day. And then we get kind of a buy zone and a sell zone, and then a further out zone, which can be where we're headed in each direction. So yesterday ES dipped through our buy zone in the overnight, right, down to our further out zone, where it stops and comes back to where it opened, reaching a little bit outside of our open range sell zone, just to get to our kind of halfway point to the next, right? And that's where it pulls back to our open range buy zone, and then back to that same line, and back to the open range buy zone. Overnight, basically holding that buy zone and our key level at 37.41. And just to talk about key levels, as you can see, I only mark so many and share them with you folks every day, and they tend to be a pretty good roadmap, right? This 3668 was an old POC that we had from back in time. And although we did slip it and kind of set a new low of year, ultimately we settled and held this old POC, which sent us higher, back above some of our key levels, which we have just bounced around. 3741, very key, 3708, and 3807. You can see when we held 3708 yesterday, it sent us right to 3807, and then we come back to hold a key level and gain some momentum before we go to try to take out the next key level. Above that, we have a couple more, creating a nice little zone above and kind of centered around 3850. And north of that, even more key levels and zones, right? In psychological 3900. So, let's get back into our normal tools and how we like to break down the day. Coming into today, ES has fired this 30-minute squeeze up. If you're new to predicted trades, these clouds represent the top and bottom of squeezes or compression. And it can be great reversal points, right? We held this 30-minute squeeze bottom at this key level, and we take off through the top to the next. So the 30 has fired, but we have a 1 hour, 2 hour, and that 4 hour is still intact, right at this key level. Can we push through these today to the upside? It is possible that usually when they are present and, a little thick like this, we will have to push against them. It takes a little time for them to open up, right? So overall, if we get up to these squeeze tops, 3800, 3807, I might be looking for a short to play back, as we can see a reversal there, just like we have seen repeatedly, with the goal of just playing back to a key level, right? We are dealing with a gap up. We'll see if after the jobless claims and whatnot come out, if we start to give up this gap and come back. But ultimately, dealing with a small gap up. So let's see if we want to fill that gap, maybe test VWAP before heading back up to take out this squeeze top. Morning, everybody. I'm seeing some folks typing into the YouTube chat. Thank you all for tuning in. So, today, where can we go? Basically, we are stuck between two key levels, and now those squeeze top and bottom pretty much align with those levels. Overall, we have had a pretty strong uptrend during the cash sessions. And we have been talking about a reversion to the mean as a potential for what's going on this week and maybe even into next. So we have we have arrived at least to the daily 8, the first moving average. Sometimes that can be the only, that can represent a reversion to the mean. We can reject the daily 8 and head back down for new lows. If you notice, the third Keltner, which we have almost hit at the lows on ES, and when we look at SPY and SPX, we did tag the third Keltner. But as you can see now that we've moved up at least to the daily 8 on these names, that third Keltner has gone down still and given us a little bit more room to the downside. So now we have about a 200-point drop to get to third Keltner. So the premise on this week was I we talked about a likely scenario that we could get a reversion to the mean. And we have to be cognizant that sometimes that can just be to the daily 8 and then back down. Just like in a bull market, when we push off of the mean, sometimes we just pull back to the daily 8 and then push further, right? Same can happen when we're in a bearish setup. So, going to be prepared and plan for both scenarios that we can get through the daily 8, this zone created by 3807 and the daily 8 and that first Keltner. I'm going to prepare myself for a scenario that we can get through this, turn it into support, and take off for the last 100 points to get back to the mean. The daily 21 has arrived at 3,900, and the daily 15 right behind it at 3,905, creating a nice magnet above. We do have this zone to contend with in between, but going to have a strategy for playing this upside if we can break out and get back fully to the mean. Also going to be prepared for this zone to stop us and send us back down to test some of these key levels and lows from the cash session this week, and this overall trend line from the lows, which we have held. That trend line has now caught up with 3708, which we held Wednesday morning and sent us back up. So we have a scenario to the upside with a thesis and levels to play to, and a scenario to the downside with levels and targets to get to. So overall, today, we have had strong days, strong drives at open. And that was even with the gap up on Tuesday. So going to be prepared, not necessarily saying I'm leaning or biased to the upside, but going to definitely be prepared for another strong open in these names that they keep buying. Some names have been strong, others have been weak. We should try to recognize that relative strength and weakness, and if we are playing upside, try to hit the ones that have strength. If we are playing downside, try to hit the ones that have weakness. On to NQ. I think we spent enough time on ES. We covered levels up and down. On NQ, same scenario. We have our squeeze tops. We are at the daily 8. NQ actually already above it, whereas ES keeps rejecting and staying below it. So let's see if NQ, which has kind of been trying to lead the upside, they have been buying a lot of tech. Let's see if NQ can hold the daily 8, and let's say this overnight high of 11,600. I think that creates a nice zone of support that we seem like we're on a trajectory to get back to. We still have that jobless report coming out in 15 minutes, so we'll see how that impacts it. It could send us through that zone and right to VWAP. So overall in NQ, a nice zone here of support. Would like to see it be support to send us higher off of the daily 8 in an effort to get back to the daily 21. We technically can get back to the daily 21 on just the ATR for NQ today. So if it wanted to get through these squeeze tops and get back to the 21, if buyers are still present in tech, she could absolutely get up there on just a simple ATR. So let's see if this zone can give us support. Maybe that jobless claims takes us through it. If so, looking for this Keltner, this trend line, and this big psychological 11,500 to be support to send us back to these squeeze tops and then ultimately through for the 21. Should we give out that 11,500 and the squeeze bottom? We are likely going to test the trend line from the lows on the S&P and NASDAQ from last week. But overall, we have some good support. We have tried to make that daily 8 support. We are back above it. Let's see if it can hold. And should the trend line from overnight give out the squeeze bottom, that 11,500, likely coming back to test 11,300 and this trend line from the lows of last week. The Ruddy. The Ruddy has a ton of squeezes, so it's going to be pretty hard for it to get higher or lower, really. Let's see if 1690 can give it enough support to get up above this daily 8 and try to push out of these squeezes. But this 4-hour being so thick usually means it'll be hard to get through. We'll likely push against it all day and then make a move overnight if it's to fire to the upside. And we can also always reverse on 4-hour squeezes. So should we not be able to get through this Keltner and daily 8 and keep trying to push off of it to get through this cloud, we can reverse and come back. Let's see if that 1690 can hold us. If not, coming back to likely 1650, 55-ish. YM. YM kind of been holding us back. You can see YM has rejected its daily 8, same as ES. So, relative strength in tech since it's above its daily 8 and trying to turn it into support. YM does have some stack squeezes just like ES, but luckily not so thick and not so red. So, let's see if we can find some support. 30,500 psychological level and kind of what we were resisting in the overnight before finally getting through. So we'd like to see that become support. 30,500. Kind of in the middle of these squeezes, right? And the high that we broke through to come up here. So let's see if that can hold to send YM higher to try to get above the daily 8 and turn it into support. And daily 21, pretty far above. Let's see, 700. And she could almost get there on an ATR. And as, since she's somewhat been holding us back, I'd say it might be a 2-day journey for YM to return to the mean. But we can always just keep rejecting the daily 8 and start the journey back down, right? So if 30,500 gives out today, we could very likely be heading back to test 30,000. Or at least this 200. But as we like to teach, we have our ranges with these squeeze top and bottom. Play the range until it breaks. If we can't get through this daily 8 and turn it into support, and we keep rejecting squeeze top, it's worth shorting back to the bottom. And yeah, we'll see where we open. If we can hold that bottom, then it's a long to get back above 30,500 and back to squeeze top. Moving on, Apple. Ooh, and it should be worth noting at least, a lot of these hourly squeezes on the indexes are bullish. In the squeeze matrix that I've created for predicted trades, these usually will shade when we start to get into compression with a bullish or bearish intent. So you can see here are some bearish setups on some of these names on a daily, but at least on an hourly, on a lot of these names, we're starting to look a little bullish. So one thing to note, but Apple. Apple's been loving these key levels that we have been talking about for a while. Held this, excuse me, held this 129, then this 131, then this 132.6, right? All in a bid to get back to our big key zone above at 138, 138.8. Almost tapped 138 yesterday, and coming back for a break. But now we are starting much higher. So it's not so far of a journey to get back to that 138 zone. And our squeezes are opening up and getting thinner, providing less resistance. So, hilariously, and this is not just coincidence, it happens quite often that our squeeze clouds come to align with our key levels. It's all just based on price action, right? Bollinger Bands, Keltners, yada yada. So, this, let's see, 2-hour squeeze has a top right at our 138 and a bottom right back at our 132.6. We do have a nice trend line that's carried us up. That's arriving back at that pre-market overnight low of 134. So, let's see if we can hold about 135 and a half, kind of cutting this squeeze in half, right? If we can hold there, kind of the level where we broke out of this trend line from the highs. Let's see if we can hold 135 and a half, 136. If so, we can likely head up to test 138. If we start to give out 135 and a half, we might be coming back down to test 134 and find the buyers at our trend line and our overnight low. And Apple going to be a great gauge for tech. If we can hold and just start to press back up to yesterday's highs and test this zone, likely they are buying a lot of tech. AMD. Yeah, no, a little bit of relative weakness the last couple of days. But yesterday, she kind of showed some decent strength, right? Overall, though, we opened at about 84 on Tuesday and Wednesday. If you look, these open levels very close to each other, and we're kind of coming to the same open level again today. And our squeezes are starting to get a little tighter. So just relative strength-wise, AMD looks like she's in a zone. Just in a zone. Not really pushing back up to try to get to things. And now the squeezes have closed in on that zone. So overall, not a huge focus for me on AMD and on chips, because they don't seem like they're trying to lead us back higher. As we'll see on other names, they're already at or above their daily 21. Chips can't even seem to really get going to the 8. So not a big interest for me. Can there be a catch-up trade? Potentially, but they're just not getting the love. Ooh, also we might have MU earnings coming up soon. Forgive me for not having that up to look at. Let's see, MU usually kicks off earnings for tech and for chips, and yes, in just a week, MU has earnings. So very likely we could see chips just go sideways into MU's earnings since they kick it off. And they are just going sideways, right? So Micron, the first chips to announce earnings. It's very common for all of chips to just go sideways, waiting on MU to report. Come on, Toss. All right. So, not a big interest there. For instance, Amazon has already made it above its daily 8 a couple of times and almost tapped its daily 21. It's slowly pushing this 4-hour squeeze higher and higher in an attempt to get it to open up. And it keeps pushing against the 2-hour. It looks like we are set to open in between the daily 8 and the daily 21. Pretty simple here for Amazon, actually. If it can't hold the daily 8 at this, what will probably be 108, 109, at 108.7 to 109. If it can't hold that during the cash session early, then we are likely going to slip back to that 106 to test this 2-hour squeeze bottom. If that can hold and we can get back through that daily 8, it would be a fight to get back up to the 21. If we can just hold that daily 8, let's just call it 108.5 to 109. If we can hold that, and you could say this trend line from the lows pre-markets, Amazon could move quickly right back up to the highs of yesterday into this daily 21, which will likely be stepping down right to 112, or just a hair lower, right inside the squeeze. So if we can hold the daily 8 right up to the daily 21, maybe through it to the daily 15, if we give out the daily 8 right back to 106 in the lows of the week. So that'll be a great gauge for tech as well. Amazon has a lot of weight. BA. Another name, relative strength, got back to its daily moving averages on good news and has just been bouncing. The 21, 15, and 8 are just all stacked together at 133. So when we want to talk about shorting the market, because the market is ready to head back down to Keltner's below, BA could be a great gauge, as long as it continues to hold above these moving averages and about this 133, 133 and a half. It's a good sign for upside in the market. BA does carry a lot of weight. Should she start to give out this 133, 32, 30, right? These squeeze bottoms, then she's telling us the market is likely ready to head back down and reject the daily 8 that it's struggling with. So great sign here. BA needs to hold these moving averages and get up to the daily 50 for the market to hold and get higher to the 21. Cat. Ooh, Cat I have not checked in on. This is a little uglier and definitely not going to be helping the market, but Cat basically hit that third Keltner. This is definitely a huge key level that we've talked about going long off of on Cat. And they kind of held it there until yesterday. She was weak. Kind of rotating out of her while a lot of tech names were going higher. It'd be nice if Cat could turn around, give YM some support to start moving higher. Pretty much tag that third Keltner overnight. So let's see if we can start to get some rotation back into Cat. Cat and BA, kind of big in the YM to move her around. So need BA to stay above those moving averages, need Cat to start to turn around for YM to start to have a little more strength. Now Google, another name that, early this week got to and above the 21 and held it. The gap down brought her down, and then she immediately got right back, the 21 and the 15, and bounced at them. Now she's set to open right at or above them. Google relative strength, pretty strong. As far as other names in tech, already back to the 21 and everything. Plus we saw a lot of flow coming in on Google on further out strikes. Actually up at this daily 2-day squeeze top. We have the daily 50 up at about 23.20. It'll be stepping down a little, so probably like 23.10. Ah, there's a daily squeeze top. So yeah, we've got right at about 2400. We've got a daily and a 2-day squeeze top. Google does have a split in less than a month, July 15th. And Google was a tech leader last year, so we could easily see Google start a strong journey over the next couple of weeks to get much higher before the split. It will be one of the last large caps to split. We do still have the Tesla split that would be coming later in August, likely. But Tesla's not up at 2,000, right? So, some relative strength in Google, a catalyst with the split coming. Something to keep an eye on. GS. Banks just been sideways and weak overall. Looking kind of similar to chips, right? Just been in a range. That range and the squeezes have now gotten super tight. So when they do get super tight and stacked like this is when we can tend to see them start to push in one direction or another. We need finance to start to look stronger and head higher for the rest of the market to get back to the mean. So, something to keep an eye on. It'd be nice if GS could start to work its way above the daily 8, which has come all the way down to align with the top of this range, right? So, we could know pretty quickly if GS, if finance could get to its daily 8 and start to push through it, if we will see more reversion to the mean on the market. JPM, pretty much the same thing, right? And if they start to give out these squeezes, it's back down to third Keltner. 110 on GS, 272 on, it's 272 on GS, sorry, 110 on JPM. And we do have this big psychological 275, which I believe was used to be an all-time high. So, you know, I'd like to think they are setting up for a move back up in finance since it's just been going sideways for 2 full weeks. Maybe they are loading to head back up now that our moving averages have slowly caught up to us. And to get back to them is, you know, a 15-point move. It's not that hard. Meta. See, relative weakness compared to other names in tech that are at their 21 or almost, right? So again, not a huge focus. Showing weakness each day. Plus, Zuck was testifying either yesterday and maybe the day before, I can't remember, but he was struggling with testifying. Meta's struggling overall. You know, ever since they changed their ticker, it's just been right back down. So, again, not a huge interest for me. Already sitting at third Keltner. She really needs to play catch up. Not saying that she will, because they're not buying her, right? And she doesn't have to go lower. They're not really, you know, it's sideways. It's weak. Not a big interest. Focus on names that have strength. And if market's going to roll over, even names that had strength could be a better, you know, catch-up play back down. So, Microsoft, opening in between the daily 8 and 21, almost made it to the 21 yesterday. Kind of similar to Amazon's chart. So let's see if we can hold the daily 8, this 252, on and a big psychological 250 on Microsoft. And as you can see, a little bit of a wedge coming in here today. So let's see if we can hold 252 at the bottom of that wedge, get up through the top 255, and a bid to get back to the 21, which will likely be right at about 258 or 257.5, and in the middle of these squeeze clouds. If we get about 252 and this wedge, we are coming back to 248 and this squeeze bottom. And market will likely be slipping to test the trend line from lows. Netflix. Overall, not been all too strong most days. We had some news on her on this day last Wednesday and also yesterday. And they liked the news. At the top of these squeeze clouds, and they are getting very thin. In fact, it's saying that the 4-hour might already be firing. So, if Amazon can get through yesterday's high, and this trend line from highs that we have now arrived back at, actually, let me just double check. Man, I hate how TOS does that. Sometimes if you don't give it enough days to see what it was connecting to on trend lines, it draws them a little wonky. So it looks like trend line from highs we got through and came back to test and pushed off of, setting new highs after the break. So overall, we are above the daily 8 at that 178, we'll call it. Let's see if that can hold us up on Netflix if we have a little dip. If it can, we can get right back through yesterday's high at 182.5-ish or 183 to get back to the 21. And we are kind of coming off the bottom of a 2-day squeeze, and the top of it aligns perfectly with that daily 50 back above 200. So if we can get going through this week's highs and last week's highs, and above the 21, we could springboard off of it to get back to 200. Netflix still has a 10-point ATR, opening around 180. So it could be a 2-day journey to get back to 200. But some interesting strength going on in Netflix and some interesting news catalysts. NVIDIA. Looking a little bit better than AMD, but not much, right? It made it to its daily 8 and above, but then it got below and couldn't get through yesterday. It's looking like it might be opening near there. But again, they could just be keeping things and chips in a range while they wait on MU. So I'm not going to expect a bunch out of chips this week. Other things have better catalysts. QQQ. Nice trend line from the lows. Even really aligning with last week's. Let's just draw it real quick live for everybody. And you'll notice I don't just grab extremes on trend lines, because when I see a trend, the wicks aren't as important to me as the overall trend. Darn it. There we go. There we go. So yeah, we did have like a wick that got below it, but if you look, let's zoom in now. Both of these candles closed above what I just drew. All of these candles closed above what I just drew. So there are times where I draw it from the extremes, but you can get a more extreme, just give you an example, right? There you go. Now you get a channel. So you have a less extreme trend line and a more extreme trend line. We can slip into that channel, and as long as it holds, we can keep going up. If they both give out, then all signs are pointing back to squeeze bottoms. So overall on QQQ, sorry, let me get back on a 30-minute. And we're on this fade from the squeeze tops. It doesn't look like jobless claims really affected us to go higher again, which isn't a bad thing. It just means we're not gapping up so much. So, on QQQ, I'm liking this overnight high. That kind of created a trend line that we finally broke through. So now that we finally broke through it, we'd like to see it become support. In fact, let's just draw a little zone from this bounce point to this high that I'm talking about. And we'll just extend that a little bit. There we go. On QQQ, pretty simple. Looking for this zone to hold. It should be a support zone now that we are through it and coming back to it. If we start breaking below 281 on QQQ, we are likely going to come all the way down to this 279, 278 to test this trend line. Should that give out, we could be coming all the way to 275 to test the squeeze bottom. 2 hour squeeze bottom at that 275, 4 hour down at that 272. But overall, I like holding this zone to head higher. The daily 8 likely going to be stepping right down into that zone as well. So if we can hold that, we can start to push through these thinner squeeze tops in a bid to get back to the daily 21 up above at 291, 292, where the daily 15 is also at. And they will likely be stepping down just slightly to 290. We closed at 280. We can easily get there today. So let's see if that zone can hold. For all I know, we could be opening below it, resisting it, and then coming down to trend lines. Roku. Much more relative strength than Netflix, right? Already above the 21, already back to the daily 50. Roku was super strong yesterday. So a lot of relative strength, plus it had a news catalyst, some partnership with Walmart. So if Roku can keep going through yesterday's high and turn this zone with the daily 50 and first Keltner into support, get above it, turn it into support, it's mission 100 and 104 where this daily squeeze and the next Keltner sit. And you guessed it, the third Keltner up in this 2-day squeeze. So some relative strength in Roku. Oh, I said like she's just telling me, baiting me. I feel like, the last couple of days I've said she looks so strong and then she pops hard and I don't play her because she's just been so beat up. But you got to get that stuff out of your head. When something's showing relative strength, has a news catalyst, yada yada. Push through these squeezes on the previous day, had no squeezes yesterday, opened right at all of daily liquidity. You got to take the shot. We talked about if we can hold daily liquidity, we could go right to that 50. Magnets, man. So let's see if Roku can get back above the daily 50 and push to the next target, or if it's going to reject the daily 50 and come back to these moving averages. Shop running out of time. Only a little time left on the split, and yesterday, super strong. Came off this daily Keltner, took right off back to the daily 15 and 21. Looks like we're going to be opening right near there, and these squeezes have opened up and fired. So, Let's see if we can hold a 340 and this bounce point at 336.5. If so, shop can just keep on trucking. 30-point ATR. Yeah, she could get back to like 370 today, and maybe this first Keltner up, which will likely step down, 375, 377. Snow, I don't usually cover her, but she has gotten some relative strength back above the 21, and this morning got like 3 or 4 upgrades by JP Morgan. So, maybe we've missed a good part of this journey. As far as names getting beaten up, I mean, Snow has gotten beaten up with everything else, but she's not gotten below 100 like other names like AMD or Square or a lot of those other, COVID favorites, let's call it, that got a lot of love. They've gotten beat up back down below 100. Snow's held up. And she's doing a lot, right? I see partnerships all the time with Snow. So, relative strength back above the 21. I mean, look at her moving pre-market on news of upgrades from JP Morgan. Let's see if she wants to take a quick dip back to the 21 before heading higher. She does have the daily 50 up above this daily squeeze. And kind of in between the second and third Keltner. Snow still has a 10-point ATR. So that'd be a couple of days' journey to get back to the daily 50. Yeah, I might keep a side eye on her, but she's been strong. SPX. Yesterday, opened with a gap down, reached down to our other gap level from Friday to Tuesday, right? We had that gap up. Yesterday, reached down and hit it, and then filled the gap from yesterday. That's why I didn't draw it. And then filled the overall gap from that Wednesday, Thursday gap down, right? So since we finally filled it, this one goes away. And we are stuck between 2 gaps, right? We have more gaps above. Let's see, with a slight gap up, we'll be back near this daily 8 and this 30-minute squeeze. Let's see if we can get above the daily 8 and turn it into support and start to push out of this 30-minute squeeze. Get back above that first Keltner down. To get back to the 21. If we do try to make that journey, we will be dealing with a gap zone from 3840 to 3900. So let's see, with SPX we need to get above the daily 8, turn it into support, this 3800 as well, and push off it. We can always reject a gap fill zone and turn around. And just like, what was it, Tuesday, we pushed into that gap that I just deleted, right? And we didn't quite fill it. And then we had a gap down, then we filled it. So we can always reach into a gap, but not fill it. So we're stuck between 2 gaps. Let's see if we can work our way up to test and maybe start to fill this one. If we reject, fall back below this daily 8, or can't get through it and turn it into support, we could go back to test or tap this gap, right? SPY. Got back to the daily 8 yesterday, trying to pull up to it this morning. Going to be similar to pretty much everything else. Let's see if we can hold this bounce point from yesterday at 374, since we are on a slight decline. We could also just hold that high. That was resistance that we got through, just like we've covered on other names. So let's see if we can hold this 375.5 or if this fade has a little more momentum to get us down to 374. Not a bad spot to bounce. If we lose 374, we're going to overnight lows back at 371, near these squeeze bottoms. If we can get through daily 8 and push 10-point ATR, we can get back to about 384. The 21, it's a little further than 1 ATR away, right? More like 1.5. Tesla. Relative strength, right? I know we have hit this 2 days in a row in the room, a number of folks playing those 750s, and I think some folks even played 700s, 730s. Overall, though, yesterday, Tesla kind of gave out a little more than my liking, but she was just falling back to the daily 21 and 15 that she held, and still holding, right? So as long as that daily 21, daily 15 can continue to hold, she can build up momentum and get through 718 back to 744, psychological 750, and that first Keltner above at 760. In a bid to get back to our main zone above and that daily squeeze top. Pretty much coming from the bottom. See if we can get to the top. If we start to give out the daily 15 at 700, we're going back to the daily 8 and this 690. If that gives out, we'll cascade likely through this 681 back to 657. This is our key levels of support. I know that we got a little below them, but once we get above them, we make nice moves back up. So, if we can't hold these daily moving averages that are stacking more and more together, this 8 will be stepping up today. This 15 stepping down, likely both of them landing at 695, and the 21 kind of going sideways. So if we can't hold daily moving averages and lose them, market likely rolling over and back to lows. So let's see if Tesla can hold daily moving averages and make another nice push up. Try to get to 750 this time. Last but not least, Vicks, and then we'll wrap this up. Vicks been on a steady fade since it tested that 33.5 and could not quite get to that 35.3 last week, right? Been in a nice steady fade ever since. And for once, we're not gapping above 30. We're actually gapping down to these daily moving averages. I know it gets a little busy on this VIX chart, but these levels are important, so I like to keep an eye on them. And as you can see, now our daily 15 is right at our 28.8. Our daily 21 is just a hair above 29. We're starting to catch a little bounce there as the market fades from its squeeze top, right? So let's see if this bounce continues. Would basically be looking for it to reject this daily 8 and this overnight high, creating a nice zone of rejection if things are going to continue to fade back to support like we just covered. Or let's see if 29.2, 29.3 can keep us down, or can keep VIX down. Once we got down below it yesterday, we kind of just rejected and stayed below 29.3, 29.21. So let's see if we can continue to reject those, sending VIX even lower, back to the daily 50 and this 28. If we get through that 29.30, get through this little zone with that overnight high at around 29.7 and this daily 8 at 29.83, If we get through that, likely trucking back above 30 in a bid to get back to 31 and effectively fill these teensy gaps, right? Meaning the market would be rolling over. So that covers all the levels to watch today on all of our names, including Vicks. Let me go get all the beast tools out for everybody, including even our free folks. If it's your first time being with us on a free day, our whole group is going to invade the free chat, show you what it's like in our subscription room, where all of our members are. And you'll get a copy of the beast tool to throw on your options charts for today. So yeah, good luck today, everybody. We'll talk to you in chat, and the beast tools will be dropping in just a couple of minutes. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.